Day 2 of the expedition to survey the water quality of the Grand River starts early as the team arrives at their next sampling site to continue working their way downstream. Before getting to work, Professor Wampler took a moment to share some observations about the effort so far.
So we're on the Grand River, approximately, 10 miles or so south of Lansing as the crow flies, but as the river flows, it's actually quite a ways between here and Lansing. And so yesterday we sampled 6 sites from the 1990s set, and then today we're hoping to get another 10 or 15 sites from here down. The Grand River it's a very complicated ecosystem with water and sediment and lots of organisms that live in it. So we're looking at just one aspect of that big picture, and we're looking at chemistry primarily, but that does impact all these other things. It affects critters that live in the water, it impacts us as humans as we drink water from that source. When we collect data, we collect it from within a context on the river. So there's things happening in the river, people putting sediment in the river, people putting water in the river, all that's impacting the water quality. And so our job is to try and interpret that, the numbers we get in that context, and figure out what they mean. So just because, say, chloride is high doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It could be natural in some cases, but it also could be very bad. It could be because of road salt and that we're putting too much salt on our roads, which would mean that we need to maybe change our behavior. Maybe we need to use something different than road salt, or at least modify how we use it perhaps, or don't use it near rivers or something like that. Because there definitely seems to be an impact from chloride in the river that we're already measuring after just 8 samples. And so the question is, what does that mean? And that's what we'll find out going forward. Is it a continuing trend that we see all along, or is it something that's going to go away? I certainly learned some things about the river that I'd never been to this reach of the river before, so it was informative for me just to see it and to see the changes in size and the changes in nature of the river. It starts out as a very narrow, pretty high gradient river with gravel, and then pretty quickly it transitions into a more muddy bottom and slower river, but still pretty curvy up in this reach. And then eventually when it reaches Ionia, then it sort of curves and goes to the west and becomes a different river again. So yeah, the river is kind of a couple different rivers depending on which part you're on. I was amazed at how quickly the clarity of the water changed pretty rapidly. And it looks like the chemistry is also changing pretty rapidly. And some of that could be because we had a storm a couple days ago and it's still kind of washing off and running off, but it definitely appears to be changing pretty rapidly as we go downstream.
Evidence of changes in the river are easily visible at Lansing, Michigan's capital city, where the Red Cedar River joins the Grand. Accessing the river in an urban setting is different from the access points in rural areas. There are parking lots, paved paths, and stairways providing easy access to the river. But the river is not very inviting. With minimal vegetation, mucky shorelines, and sick animals, it is perhaps the least pleasant part of the sampling experience so far. Research assistant Jillian shared some observations.
The one part of this trip that has been a little kind of hard to see is going through really dense populations like urban areas, especially Lansing. It was pretty bleak in Lansing. We're sampling underneath overpasses, and it was just very muddy, smelly, just trash everywhere. And it was the city was kind of just going on and people were doing their own thing, while this river was kind of just sitting here quietly, almost suffering in a way. So it's almost forgotten because, we kind of just built up around it. I think it definitely needs more attention in areas like that.
As the team finished up gathering data in the city, Professor Nishaw arrived to begin the day's chemical analysis. Watching her work, knowing that the results would only produce numbers we don't yet understand, we can't help but wonder what insights this examining would reveal.
Well, one of my favorite naturalists is John Muir, and he has a quote that says, basically, when you go to examine nature, you go to examine these things, you find out that everything is hitched together. It's you can't pull one thing without affecting something else. And that's very true of river systems. River systems, the water is connected to the life that lives in it. It's just connected to everything else, the banks, the erosion, everything else. And so as we examine the river and we look at one particular piece of it, the water quality piece of it, I view us as sort of like a river doctor. We're examining the health of the river by looking at some vital stats and how that river is at the moment. It's a snapshot in time. We're basically putting a blood pressure gauge on the river's arm, and we're measuring its blood pressure in essence and figuring out how that is compared to what it was in the past. And so then also going forward, other people will be able to use our data to figure out if the river is healthier or less healthy going forward, both in time and in space. So if there's certain towns that are doing a better job than others, we might be able to see that, and we can maybe emulate that town and say, hey, they're doing something great, it's affecting the river positively, let's reproduce that other places. So that's the sort of thing we might learn by doing this. And then there's an impact, I guess, on me personally, because I love to be on rivers, I love to be around rivers. For me, it's a connectivity to something that is much bigger than our towns and our roads and our places that we've built, because nature built this. And it's continually building itself. I mean, it's continually changing and moving. And so I think by doing this work, and we're helping understand the river better, all that stuff that we learn, we can put together to make better decisions about the river and how we treat it and also how we protect it.
Once finished in Lansing, the team pressed on downstream, collecting samples at the sites used in the 1990 expedition. The farther downstream the team got from Lansing, the river looked healthier. The presence of wildlife is another indication of water quality, as is, to some degree, the clarity of the water. Not only are changes in the river visible, but so are the ways communities treat the river. In some cases, rather than ignoring the river, some communities seem to embrace and show an appreciation of it. While the look of the river suggests that the water quality has improved significantly since leaving Lansing, it will be the data that confirms just how much things have changed. Day 2 of the survey expedition started out in a rural setting, went into an urban environment to witness the degradation of the river, and then back into rural environments in small communities where the water quality seemed to be restored. The team wraps the day at Lyons, which is near the halfway point of the length of the river as it proceeds to Lake Michigan. Join the team in episode 4 as they press on and make more observations and discoveries about the water quality of the Grand River. If you've enjoyed this river story, be sure to like it and subscribe if you haven't already, and share the link with everyone you know who has a passion for river stories.